Hey, honors physics students, you have the first textbook assignment, and here are just a couple of hints about it. Most of the questions are pretty trivial, and so that you are just going to be practicing things like when you multiply, do the process first on your calculator, then round to the right number of significant digits. There is a question, for instance, number 76, which asks for the volume. Certainly, I hope you realize that the volume is the length of the room times the width times the height. Then when you're finished multiplying, round to the least number of significant digits as you're aware that you need to do. Now, let me give you a couple of hints about number, for instance, 84 and 85. So let's look at number 84. Number 84 has a graph of force as a function of distance as a function of force. When you apply a force, the distance changes. And so what you will draw is now I'm drawing a little example here, but you want to draw a full sheet graph for this. And when you draw your full sheet graph, you can, let's say the graph went from here all the way down. You can do your work in the middle of the graph. Always get more accuracy when you do a full sheet graph. And so you're going to do a graph of force versus the distance. Now, when you do that, in this case, it should be a straight line. Hopefully that'll be the case. When they ask for the equation, the y variable is going to be the distance, and the x variable is the force. So, of course, you're going to use, let's say you get a straight line that looks like this. You'll use the equation y equals mx plus b. Well, you'll have to find the slope first. So choose two grid crossings. So, for instance, if you look at my graph, there's a grid crossing there and a grid crossing there. When you do the rise divided by the run, that's the slope. When you write y equals mx plus b, if this is not called y, don't call it y in your equation. So it should be d equals whatever the slope turns out to be times the force, but there is no y-intercept. Number 85 is a very similar kind of question. In this question, you are being asked to make a plot of the acceleration versus the mass. So again, they give you the acceleration and they give you the mass. So you'll plot these. Now, when you plot them, you will get a hyperbola like this. Then look in your notes and realize that's an inverse proportion. Now, because it's an inverse proportion, you can make a new graph. To make a new graph, what you should do is take your numbers for the mass and the acceleration, and you need a new spot right here, and there goes 1 over the mass. So if the mass for whatever the mass is, so we're going to have acceleration versus the 1 over the mass, whatever the mass is, and I can give you an example, let's say the mass is 1 over that is 1. 2, 1 over 2 is 1/2, which is 0.5, and go on like that. When you make a final graph of acceleration versus 1 over m, you can use y equals mx plus b to get the equation. That should help with that question. I think this is good enough hints.